Okay. So this presentation, we're going to be talking about navigating the macro system. But Dave asked a quick question about using web apps. You can run web apps on your mobile device. It's not the best look and feel of an app. You do have to do a lot of scrolling left and right, and up and down. The way web apps work inside of your mobile phone is exactly the way it would look on your browser. It's the same size, so you can't really have different sizes based on your mobile device. I would hope that Microsoft is working on that as an enhancement moving forward, but nothing today. Nothing to date. So, but I know I was at the Portland Access User Group meeting. They have a user conference every May. If you have a chance to go there, it's awesome. PAUG, P-A-U-G, Portland Access User Group, and it's just an excellent event. There's actually Access programmers. There were over 100 Access programmers at the last one in May, and a lot of people are actually international, from all over the world. It's pretty cool seeing those people. But at that group, we did talk about a little bit about mobile apps, and Microsoft was there. They had a couple representatives, so I would think that in the future we would have that. So let's talk. We're going to be talking about the macro system, and we're going to be talking about no-code solutions. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right into SharePoint. I actually have in my site contents. I have what's called an Access Sandbox. It's a place that I go to kind of play around with different apps and different features before I put it into a real version of an app that I've been playing with. So in here, we're going to create a brand new app, and the way to do that is if I start typing in Access here, and I just click on Search, it will find the Access app here, and I just click on it, and now it's going to ask me what do we want to name this app. And so we're going to go ahead and call this Access Web Apps. We'll call this 003, and I'll just call it Macro System because that's what we're going to be talking about. Now I'm going to make this app available to everyone after this so that you can have it, play with it in your Office 365 site as well. So I'm going to go ahead and create this. So what this does is that it goes and it starts creating the foundation of it. Now I've seen this take anywhere from 5 seconds to 30 seconds. Sometimes it can take a little bit longer than that to create that, but it's usually pretty quick. So here it was under 10 seconds. So what we're going to do here is we're going to click on this, and it's going to download, and I'm going to go ahead and always run permissions on this site. And so it opens up Access, and the first thing we're going to do is actually download the .app file. So we're going to click on this, and it will download our AccessDW file. So, I'm sorry, it's not a .app file, it's an AccessDW file. So an AccessDW file is basically a connection to your web app, W for web app. And so we're going to go ahead and open this. I have Access open here with nothing open, so I'm going to go ahead and click on this, which will open up Access on our system. Now, we'll go ahead and wait for this to come up. Gives me a chance to grab a quick sip of water. So when the Access Web App comes up, we have the opportunity now to add tables. Now, we can either click on New Table or click on Add a Blank Table. But I found that the templates that are built in are very good. So whether you're looking for project management, or you're looking for a task management system, or whatever you're looking for, you can put in a word like tasks, for instance, and search, and you can generally find something pretty close to what you're working with. And this is the preferred method of creating this. It's just much faster. So I'm going to go ahead and choose tasks here, and what it does is it's going to immediately build the tables and views. Now, within Access, when you're choosing a table like that, it automatically builds the tables themselves. So I'm going to open up the navigation pane. You can see this by choosing tasks, it created the task table as well as employees. So it automatically builds those tables. But it also builds views, and views are your forms. That term is used interchangeably between views and forms. And so what it does is it creates a list view, which includes a filter or a search. So it does that automatically. It adds an action bar across the top, and then it creates a two-columnar format for you. So it does that automatically when you tell it to build that. It also creates a data sheet, which we're very familiar with, but because it's housed on the web, you can't just use a standard Access desktop data sheet. It actually has to be a form itself. And then, depending on what tables you add, it will add some grouping. So in this case, we've got it by status. So it automatically creates that for tasks and employees. We have the capability of, if we want to look at the data in these tables, we can easily open the data and we can look at the raw data here. But since we're working with web apps, we're going to go ahead and open this in the web browser. So we're working with data, so we're going to go ahead and click on Launch App, and this will open up in our web browser. So here we have our tasks. So we've got a list, data sheet, and by status. We also have employees, and you can see the list of the employees here. So it automatically puts us on a blank record. I'm going to go ahead and add in a couple employees here. And I'll go ahead, since Alyssa's on, Alyssa Jones. Oops. And this is not a part of, this prefill is really a part of an autofill program I have, so that just so I point that out. So now I've got that added. I can click on Save, and it will automatically add this to the list. If I wanted to add another employee, I can click on the plus. Employee 2. I hope I have that right, Tom. And then, so we've got that added. I'll choose Save, and I'll go ahead and add me as well. So Tom says first try. I get it on the first try. So I'll go ahead and add me. Andy Davis. And Work Smart. Perfect. So we've got that information here. So you can see as we're adding records here, it shows us the information along the left-hand side. So if we ever wanted to search for something, if I type in JO and hit enter, it'll automatically filter by that name. And I can choose the remove filter if I want to do that. So it'll show them all, or I can use this to filter the information. The interesting thing about this filter is that it's not just filtering by what we see here, but it's also filtering by anything within the record itself. So if we were searching by we'll try see if we agree it. Yeah. So here I typed in GRA. There's no GRA here, but I know the city is Grand Rapids. So you can see it's not just filtering by what's in this summary, but it's actually filtering by anything that's on that form. Also notice here down below, I should have mentioned it when it built it, but when we're looking at this data, we can see the employee and we can see the tasks as it automatically creates that subform relationship between the employee and tasks. So it does that automatically. So we've gone ahead and we've added some people. And I'm going to go ahead and jump over to, and actually I'll show you what it looks like in Datasheet View. Very similar in Datasheet View, so you're all comfortable with that. And if I want to jump over to tasks, I can add some tasks here. So for some of the stuff that we're working with, there's different features of macros that I want you to get comfortable with. So we're going to kind of go through some different scenarios, and I'll show you how macros are utilized, and we'll talk a little bit about some gotchas that we've run into. So I'm gonna kind of do some of these pretty quick so that it doesn't take a ton of time to enter data. So I'm just going to call this task 1. Priority is medium is fine. Doesn't matter. Start date. I'll go ahead and put in today's date, and let's say that this one is due Thursday. Percent complete is 0. Status not started, and we'll assign this to me. So as I start typing, you can see if there's an AN in the name, you can see AN for Andy and AN under Joan. AN is in Joan. It will automatically show that. So instead of using a drop down, it does an autofill, autocomplete for you. So I'll go ahead and put in Andy there. If I want to save, I just click on Save. One of the things I really like this feature with the action bar. The reason why is it seems like whenever I go on site at a new client, it seems like every programmer that we follow to either clean up their mess or whatever, it seems like every programmer has a little bit different way of doing an add a record, delete record, edit record, save record, cancel record. They all seem to have a little bit different ways of doing things. So within the web interface, no matter what you're working with, you automatically have the same action bar all the time. And we have the capabilities of disabling these buttons. We can hide these buttons or delete them altogether if we want. And we also have the capability of adding new action bar buttons if we like. So we'll be talking about that later, a little bit later on. So we've added one task, which is due date is the 21st. I'm going to go ahead and add another one, and we'll do task 2, and put in some junk. I'll also put the start date as today. This one I'll put the due date of let's say next week, Friday. And this one I can say, it's in progress. I'm going to say I got 10% done. And I'll also assign this one to me, so we have it. So we've got another record in there. Let's go ahead and add one more, and I'll call this task 3. And I'll put some more junk in there. Start date, day. And this one, I'm going to say this one was due yesterday. And I'm going to say that one was not started as well. I'm going to go ahead and I'll use me as well. Doesn't matter. Okay. So we've got a little bit of data in there. I'm going to save that so you can kind of see the information here showing up. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to program a few things here. There's different features within the macro system that allows us to look up records in a table or filter records, and there's different functionality like date add and the today and day and different things like that. So here, we've got data here. Notice we still have the access. I clicked on access, so we still have the design view of the window open. So I can click on edit here to edit this this employee form if I want to. And I also just want to point out real quick, if I were in the Access app and I wanted to edit from here, there's this little setup over to the upper right-hand side that I can click on Customize and Access. All that does is downloads the ACCDW file again, and then I can open it within Access. But I happen to have Access already open, so we're going to go ahead and do some things here. So, the first thing we're going to talk a little bit about is data macros. And so the way data macros work, I'm going to go ahead and click on Advanced, and I'm going to choose data macro here. And so what a data macro is that when you're working with records within Access, since we don't have the VBA where we can loop through a record set, we can't dim a record set and loop through that. We actually need to use a data macro in order to loop through those records for us. So what we can do, in this case, we're going to create a very simple macro, and all it's going to do is it's going to look up records in the task. We'll use the tasks table. So it's going to look up records in the task table and just tell us, is there anything that's due this week? And so what we're going to do is we can hit the drop down here, and it allows us to choose the different options that are available. You can see we've got lookup record here. So we can choose that right here, and we can look up a record. And so this time I'm going to just start typing in lookup record in tasks. So we're going to look up record in the task table. Notice as I start typing, if I want to find something in employees, I can just start typing and it'll find the table we're working with. So we're going to look up a record in tasks, and in this case, all we want to do is find out, are there any tasks that were due, let's say they're due in the next 7 days, or we'll say before the 7 days from now, so that it captures anything that's task due now. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, I'm going to look up record in task where, and now we have to say, okay, what are we looking for? Well, we're looking for a field, tasks dot, in this case we'll use due date, where the due date is less than, and what we're going to use the functionality to determine what is 7 days from today. Well, the function is called date add, but I just want to show you, as I start typing in letters, it'll show us many of the choices to select from. So in this case, we're going to do date add because we're going to add 7 days to today's date. So we're going to use, in this case, we're going to use day. Notice that this is a little bit different syntax than what you see in Access Desktop. So we're going to say we want to add days. We're going to add 7 days, and what we're going to do is we want to add 7 days from today. And I'll use the today with the parentheses. So I want to look up tasks where the due date is less than 7 days from today going back. And we'll have it so that we want to make sure that the status does not equal completed. Because if it's completed, we don't really care about it. So again, we're going to look up a record in tasks where the due date is less than 7 days from today, and the status is completed. If that happens, we're going to have it return we're going to return a variable back to us. So wherever we call this macro from, we want it to tell us what the results are. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and set we can set a local bar or a return bar. A return bar, whoops, I did it twice. Do that again. Set return bar. And we'll go ahead and call this, depending on who, well, in this case, I'm going to call it rbar, we'll just call it task found. So it'll tell us if the task is found and return a yes if it is. What I was going to say is that when you're setting names of these, for me, I prefer to use rbar for return bar. Some people don't use that rbar at all. They just put in task found. I use lbar for local bar. I use and different things like that. It's just easier for me. It's not required, but I prefer to have that in there so that I can kind of keep them straight in my mind. So we're gonna do that. So now that we've created this, we're going to go ahead and save this macro. I can go ahead and click on Save up here, or I can just try and close it and then save it. And for me, again, I like calling these DM or DMCR for data macro. And then I'm just going to say check, we'll just call it check tasks to determine if there's any tasks that fit that. And again, if you have any questions, please stop me as we're going through this, and I can kind of explain it a little further. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. I do want to show you something real quick. If you mess something up, and let's say I forget to put in a parentheses, if I click off of that, notice there's a little red exclamation point here. That tells me there's something wrong with this expression. So I will know if I put it in parentheses, it'll tell me that. Now, I'll also do this. Delete this. So if I just have today, it doesn't show this, but I think that this will break it. I'm going to click on Save here. Good. Okay, so here, I just broke it. Sorry, there's a problem with the data macro. Please check the table, dmacro check tasks. And it says the identifier today cannot be found. So it's telling us that, hey, we forgot to put in the opening and closing parentheses. So once we do that, click on Save again. It will save it fine without any problem. But I just wanted to point those things out. If you make a mistake, it will it does catch you. So it checks all your syntax when you're saving a macro. So I tell people whenever they're designing macros, save often. Because again, we're working in a live environment where you have to be connected to the internet to work with any of this stuff. So it's very important that you save as often as possible. I've personally run into cases where I was butting up against a meeting I needed to get to. I was writing a macro, and I had to leave for my meeting because I couldn't save my macro, and I couldn't just wait around trying to figure out what was wrong with the macro to save it. And so, as you're doing this, just as you add a few lines, just save it all the time. You'll avoid the headaches that I ran into. So now we've got this macro saved, and we can build in that functionality into this form. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Edit here. So we're going to edit this form, and let's go ahead and add an action bar so you can kind of see how that works. So we're going to click on the plus, and it will show us a new button here. I can click on this little cylinder, and we're going to call this, I call these act bar. You can call it what you want. And I'm just going to call this, I'm just going to call it Find Tasks, whatever, Find past due or whatever, it doesn't matter, whatever we want to call it. This is the tooltip that will appear below. So you can say determine if any tasks due, whatever, in 7 days, whatever. So once we put that in, that tooltip will show when we hover over it, and we're going to go ahead and click on the on-click property. So in here, in this on-click property is where I can utilize that. So in here, I can tell it to run a data macro. So I'm going to go ahead and tell it I'm going to run the data macro that we've already created. It's going to run this check tasks, and I'm going to set the local var for what it determines. Now, it already tells us the return variable is called task found. It automatically, because we set that in the data macro, that's what it's going to pull. But we need to set a local var for the macro to use within this for within this macro itself. A local var is used within this macro. A return var is when you're calling another macro, a data macro. So I'm just going to call this lvar. We can call it whatever we want. No, I'm going to do this a little bit different. I'm going to do filter records. Oops, I can type. So I'm going to set the lvar called filter records. So at this point, I'm going to tell it, what are we going to do if it finds that happens? So we're going to set the if. So I clicked on if and hit tab. So it's a little bit different than typing the if statement directly. So you hit, do that. So we're going to say if the lvar filter records equals yes, and remember we told the data macro that if the task is found, set the rvar task found to the word yes. We had told it to do that in the data macro. So what we're going to do is we're going to say if the lvar filter record is yes, what we should do is let's go ahead and tell the system to filter the records in our system based on that, so that we can see those records that are due before 7 days from today. So what we're going to do is, so if that happens, we're going to run a requery. So we're going to tell it to requery the records that we're on, but now we have to tell it, okay, what exactly again, the data macro told us, yes, there are records that meet that criteria. In this case, we're telling it what we want to do with the current form that we're on, the current view that we're on, and we're going to tell it to basically filter by that information. So we're going to go ahead and say, okay, well, if that happens, we want tasks.due date, where task due date is less than, and we're going to do the same functionality we did before, date add day, comma, 7, comma, today. So we're going to say filter these records where the due date is less than a week from now. And we still want to see, and I like putting in the brackets, just I'm just used to doing that all the time. Does not equal completed. So we're saying, okay, we want to filter, we want to requery the records, we want to basically filter the records for any records that are less than today plus 7, and the status does not equal completed. So that's what it's going to do. Now, if we want to, let's say that it doesn't meet those, so I'm just going to add a message box. So I'm going to just do a message box, and no records are due in the next 7 days. So we can have it pop up. Oops, do this a little bit different because I said if this equals yes, else we want to drop this message box. I don't want it to requery the records and give me the message box. I apologize for that. We want it to do if this, then this. But it's kind of cool. If you saw, we can actually drag these things around. So wherever we want it to go, it's a drag and drop interface. It's really nice. We can also, if we wanted to, is we've got the functionalities over here. So if we know that message box appears here, I can actually drag this down here, and I can put it in that way. It's I just think when you get used to it, you're just going to start typing the first few characters, and then you don't have to deal with it. But for people just getting used to, the drag and drop is really nice. Just drag it where you need it to go. And so basically it's going to filter the records that we need to that way. So we're going to go ahead and do this. Then we'll go ahead and save this. We'll close this. And now we're going to go ahead and close this. We're going to save it, and we're going to view it again in the browser. Now, one common mistake that I made early on is that I would switch over to the browser, and I would look at it, and I would say, oh, wait a second, the button we just added isn't there. The reason why is we haven't refreshed the browser. So we can either re-click on the macro system, which will reload it, and you can see the button now exists, or if we don't want to do that, we can close these out. I can go to Access, I can click on Launch App, that will reopen it and refresh it at the same time. So whatever's more convenient for you, just depends on whatever button's closer. So you can either click on this or open in browser and Access. So now, let's verify. So we've got this one, due date is 8/21, so that's obviously less than 7 days from now. This one is 10 days from now, and this one is past. So in theory, this button should filter those two out. So if I click on that, it automatically filtered by those two. Okay, so that works. Now, the thing is yeah, it did it, but I can't see all three records again. If I click off employees and tasks, then go to tasks, I'll see them again, but that's kind of a pain. So I would probably add one more thing here. We'll go back to Access. I would click on Edit. I would add another button here. And this one time I would do action bar, show all, whatever I want to call it. Show all records. And I'll do on click. And all we're going to do here is we're going to requery records, but we're not going to put in anything there. By putting in nothing, it shows everything. So we're going to go ahead and close that, save that, close this. You know what? Let's before we do that, let's change the button. The buttons that are here, they've expanded what the different buttons that are here, but today you still cannot add your own buttons here. So you just kind of have to pick something that fits. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up this with a minus, so we can show the little picture there. And now we'll go ahead and close that. And this time I'm going to click on Launch App. And so now it shows the three. I click on the star, filters by the two. I click on the minus. It shows them all again. So it's giving us the capability of switching between filtering those or showing all records. So it gives you the ability to do that. And you can see as we hover over these, it shows you that little tooltip. So it gives you that automatically. So does anybody have any questions based on these things? And again, we've covered a few different things. We've covered requery. We've covered lookup record. We've talked about the action bar. We talked about date add. We talked about the today function. What else? We did a set return bar. We did a set local bar. So we did all kinds of stuff. We created our first data macro. So we talked about message box. So we did a whole bunch of little things here. So any questions so far? Okay, I don't see any comments, so I'm going to continue. If anybody, again, if you guys have any questions, go ahead and pop up something in chat, and I'll answer those immediately for you. So this is, Octavio says data sheet. You want to see what the data sheet looks like? So here's the data sheet. Applies to data sheet 2. Let's check that out. So if I filter here, it's showing all records in data sheet. I have not tried that, but let's see if that works. If we go into data sheet here, go into edit, we do have the capability of adding that. So we certainly could add the same. We could certainly add the same thing here. Now, a way to do that quickly, I would say, actually, I'm going to go over here, and let's see if we can do this quickly. So if I click on task, we do edit. I'm going to click on the star, choose this, unclick. I'm going to click on something, to do a Control-A to select all. I'm going to do a Control-C to copy. Close that. Click, we don't need that anymore. We'll jump on data sheet, edit. Click on the plus. Here, I'm not going to bother with the control names. I'm going to do a Control-V, paste that back in. Close that. Yes. Close that. And I'm not bothered. I'm not going to add the requery since we know if this functionality works, the requery will work as well. So let's go ahead and launch app. This is a great question because I've never tried this. Click on the star. There you go. Cool. Learn something new every day. So you can use that filter within the data sheet. Great question, Octavia. I appreciate that. Great question. Cool. So now this is nice. I mean, it searched our records for us, and it allows us to filter by that, but it didn't really do anything with the data. So even though the due dates are set for that, let's say I've got to go out of town for the next week. I've got to bump all these due dates. I need to bump these a week so they're not all showing past due here. And let's say these aren't client-specific due dates that we're just saying, I'll just ignore the client. But let's say it's something that we can set our own schedule and not worry about that stuff. I'm not going to go into the politics of changing your due date. So let's go back into Access. And we're going to add another macro here. But instead of checking the tasks, this time we're actually going to modify the data. So modifying the data is similar to looking up the data, but we're actually going to do something with it. So in this case, we're going to create a new data macro. And this time, we're going to say, instead of looking up any record, we're going to tell it to do something with the records that it finds. So we're going to say for each record, this is kind of like your for next loops. So for each record in in each record in tasks, we're going to use the same condition. And actually, I'm going to cheat here. I'm going to go into Design View, go ahead and grab this. We might as well cheat whenever we can, rather than having to retype everything. And I'm going to go ahead and paste that in. So where this happens, now we're going to tell it to do something with those records. So first we need to tell it we're going to edit the record. Now notice that these changed a little bit. And let's do that. We'll do that again. I'm going to cancel that out. When we first hit the drop down, we've got some different functions. In this case, for each record in tasks. And you'll find that sometimes, just depending on where you are, you'll see a few extra options. So for each record in tasks where this happens, we want it to edit the record. So we're going to tell it to edit. And now we need to do something with that. So you can see under edit record, we've got these different choices. We could do something if something happens. We can cancel a record change. In this case, we're going to do a set field. So we're going to set the field of the due date. So we're going to set tasks dot due date. And that's one thing. For me, whenever I name fields, I don't include the spaces. You can include, and in Microsoft's case, they decided in all their templates to use spaces. It's not a horrible thing. If I'm creating a blank table from scratch, I don't use spaces in that. But okay, so in this case, we're going to set the field, the due date, and I'm just going to go ahead and say, hey, we might as well grab this. So we're going to set the value where we're going to add 7 days. Actually, we don't want to add 7 days to today's date. We want to add 7 days to this date. So we're going to add days 7 to the current due date for that record. So we're going to edit the record. We're going to set the field to a value. We're setting the field to a value. And we can see here, is there anything else we need to do? No, there's nothing else we need to do. And so we're going to, that's all we, in this case, that's all we need to do with this macro. So we're going to go ahead and save this. And I'll call this D macro change due dates. Okay. So now, I'm going to go over to the list view, and we're going to go ahead and choose edit. And this isn't something I'm going to put in the action bar. I'm actually going to create a new button. What I found is wherever you put, whatever field is highlighted is where a control is going to go. So if I choose assigned to and I click on the button, it will add a button beneath that. I'll delete that out. If I was on priority and hit the button, it would add it under priority. So just keep that in mind. I mean, you can certainly move things around, and in the web interface, it's going to make room wherever it is, because again, we in the web world, you can't have controls on top of each other like we can in the desktop world. I've seen cases where people have two buttons, and they overlap the two buttons, and so they just swap those two buttons out. That's not my preferred way of doing it, but I've seen that happen, and you can't do that on the web. So in here, we're going to go ahead and say update due dates to date plus 7 days. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to just tell it we're going to update those due dates. So here, and we'll jump into this real quick. I'll show you the properties. This is a button. In here, we can change the control name, so we can call that button update date. We can change some things here. We can choose the caption. We can have a little tooltip. We can make it the button visible or hidden. We can enable the button, if you want. And then in here, we're going to go ahead and run that data macro again. So we're going to run the data macro, dm, right? So dm change due date. And so it's going to run that. Now, after that is done, I would want to requery those. I would tell it to requery those records, just so that you view all of them again. Because since we already have the action bar there, the action bar is telling us that we can filter by those 2 records. Let's say it does that, and now we've decided, you know what? Let's update the due dates. So this way, we can tell it to change the due dates and then show us all the records. So that's the only reason I'm adding requery here. You don't have to. I just prefer to try and automate things as much as possible for my clients so that they don't have to think about requerying the records afterwards. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. And yes. And so now, close out of this again. And I'm going to go ahead and launch the app. So now we can see our list. I can go ahead and click on the star, make sure that that still works, so we can see our 2 records. This one says 8/21, just so we can see what happens. I'm going to go ahead and click on update due date to date plus 7 days. When I click on that, now this adds, well, let's see here, that's task 1. So it adds 7 days to the previous due date. Used to be the 21st, now it's the 28th. Task 2 didn't change because that was 10 days. Task 3 added 7 days to that one. So, and after it did that, it automatically requeried so we can see all of that happen. So that shows you kind of how to do editing records that exist. You have to remember you have to do for each record. You need to edit it and then tell it what to set the field at. So that's what we did there. Now, one of the things that I do and I see it's 8:06 Central Time. We'll go for another 5 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. I want to show you a couple other things about the macro system. But then after that, I always open up a period of time at the end of this, and I'll open up both the chat as well as the voice, so you guys can ask any questions that you want. Because I like to open things up. You guys can ask any questions you want, and hopefully people within the group can answer those questions as well as myself. So, okay. So one of the things that I had done in desktop apps is that when I'm in a field, and you can see right now they changed this a little bit so that when you highlight a field, it turns blue. So you can see as I'm clicking on these, it turns blue. One of the things that I've done in some of my apps is when I move from field to field, I actually change the background color to a different color just to kind of tell the user where I'm at. I also want to point out something else. We're in a web interface, and because of that, we can't control the tab order. So this tab will immediately go here, which immediately goes here, which immediately goes here. So I just want to point out those two things. And we're going to kind of address both of those things. So we're going to go back to our Access database. So the first thing that we can do is if you prefer the tab order to be down this way and down this way. And by the way, this is a feature that I told the Access product team that I'd really like to see, because on our desktop, we're used to going straight down and then straight down. We're not used to bouncing around, especially if you've got this big chunk. So it goes from here to these three and then back to here. Kind of weird. But we can kind of change the effect by using an after update. So I'm going to click on this action. Now you can immediately see that the actions in a web interface that are part of a button or a text box, it's very limiting. We've got on click and we've got after update. We don't have before update. We don't have on activate. We don't have on got focus. We don't have on lost focus. All of those are missing. All we have are on click and after update. So just keep that in mind. So what we're going to do is, in this case, after update, I want it to go to description. So I'm going to just say after update. I'm going to choose go to control. And in this case, it's the description. I can start typing it. And in this case, it's this one. So I'm going to tell it to go to the control this. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. Close out of that. Close out of that. Save it. I'm going to launch the app. Hit the record. And so after I edit something, now it's going to go to description. So I can force it to go from one field down. So I can force it to do that. The problem is if I don't edit that, the after update doesn't occur. Therefore, it goes over to priority. So keep that in mind. It's not on lost focus. It's after update. So just keep that in mind. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Secondly, we're going to go back in here, and we can also tell it. Actually, I'm going to take a step back. Notice this field. Here's the field. If we go into design, what are our choices? So we've got this. What are our choices? Bold, italic, underline. We can choose the point size. We can choose left, middle, or right align, and we can choose the font itself. There is no back color. Back color does not exist here. So if we want to set the back color, we can't just set it here, so we have to do it programmatically. So, and actually I'm going to take another step back, is in the form itself, it does have an action here, so you could do onload, and you could tell it to highlight or change the background of required fields to light blue or whatever you want. So you can set the background color. I'll show you how to change that background color. So in this case, we're going to choose after update, and we are there's not set background color, but there is set property. So we choose set property of the control. We're going to use the description multi-line text box. The property here, we can choose enabled visible forecolor back color. So we can programmatically change the back color here. So we can choose the back color, and now we need to use the hex results that we're used to. Now for me, the only ones I can usually remember are $00000 for black and $FFF for white. That's pretty much the limitation of what I remember. So a lot of times I'll use like this, and yeah, that's fine. We can leave this page. So under here, these are the colors, and it shows you the hex values for all the colors. So if you ever need that, I mean, you can just type in color hex values and find something similar to this. If you want this link, that's fine. Let me know. But it's you can find that anywhere on the web. And so in this case, let's say we want to use something like, let's say this C green, 8FBC8F. 8FBC8F. Okay. So we're going to jump back over to Access. 8FBC8. Whoops. That's right. 8F. So 8FBC8F. Okay, so we're going to change the back color. So let's go ahead and save this, get out of this. Save this. Launch the app. Choose Edit. You have to be in Edit mode. Change it to 2. And now you can see we changed the background color. Now, of course, when I change this and tab off of it, it keeps that color. So you just need to make sure that after an update of this, you change it back to FFF. So just those kind of things, kind of just to keep in mind if you're doing it. I also want to point out a couple other things that have helped me in macros, and that is couple things. First of all, there are things called comment and group. We went over the if statement, but a comment basically allows you to put in kind of like your remark statement with the apostrophe. And so we could just say this info changes goes to the description and changes color. So we can do that. So we can put in comments. We can drag those wherever we want. So we can put in whatever comments we want as we do it. There's another piece of functionality that's a little less known that I really, really like, and it's called group. Group is similar to a well, I'll just explain it by doing. So what a group does is it allows you to section out pieces of your code. So in this case, I'm going to call this group set Desker back color. And what that allows me to do is I'm actually going to drop these pieces into this group. Now I can set another group. We're going to do another group. We're going to call this set status background color. And I'm going to just cheat by copying these, coming over here, pasting them in. I'm going to change this to the status combo box. Change this to the status combo box. Now, what's the cool part of this is that, see, there's a little minus next to it. What that does is it allows you to shrink down that group. So if you want to just work with setting the desktop, the description back color, you've got that in a group, so you can kind of keep these separated. So as you're working with different pieces of your macro, you only have to look at that part of the section. It's amazing how much time that simple trick can show you, and it's just one of those little known features that this one I've just recently come across. So it's really slick. I'm going to be using that a lot more going forward. And that's all. I mean, obviously, the group and the comment do nothing. And notice that when this shows it, the comment shows in dark green italics. I like that. But you've got, it's kind of slick how that works. We talked a little bit about the if statement. If you have if, you can add your add else. You can also add else if, and you can add as many else ifs if you want. So if this, else if, you can add as many as you want. So you can do all that kind of stuff. And we'll shrink all that down. We don't need that. I just want to point those out. Okay. There's one other thing I'm just going to kind of explain because we don't have to, it's a little after, quarter after, so I just want to just explain it. But we're not going to get into it. But there's something called change view, and there's something called open pop-up. The difference is that if we're looking at our web app, if we're in here, if we change view, it's just similar to, and I'll discard my changes. Change view is just taking the current form that you're on, the current view that you're on, and changing to another view. There's also called open pop-up. What open pop-up does, and a good example is, like, we've got assigned to Andy Tabis. What the open pop-up would do is would open up the employees list, pulling up Andy Tabis, and that's kind of like what an open pop-up does. You can see it's a built-in here, but this is what an open pop-up does. Now, this has it built in for Andy, but maybe you want to use it for something else. Maybe you want to do a pop-up of your different status capabilities. Maybe you want to do a pop-up of companies, whatever it is. You've got that open pop-up that will pop up in front of the form that you're on. Now, just like in Access, this is kind of a modal where we can't click behind it. So this remains the focus until we close it out. But I just want to point that out. I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording here because that kind of concludes what we wanted to talk about with macros. Stop that.